Nashville?
Nashville. Oh, thank you. Yes. Whew. Been a long couple days now. Thanks for coming to the traditional Q&A. The way that we'll do this is we solicited some questions online, and then I also have some questions that I will just kind of sprinkle in, and then we also have mics up here for you all to ask questions. So if you have a question, you don't have to wait for me to finish. You can go ahead and line up. I will call on you and sort of sprinkle them in, and yeah, just have a conversation, see where it takes us. So, how was the conference?
Oh, the great conference. Thank you. And I was a bit tired this year, and so that I missed many of the sessions. But looking forward to see through the videos.
Oh, good. Well, icebreaker question. That went well. Maybe not. Maybe it didn't go well. All right. The questions online were really good. I think we'll probably do that more in the future as well. Allow people to kind of expand on their question in written form. So the first one we had was looking back at Ruby's history. Some of these will sound familiar, but I think people like asking you the same question year over year and see if they get a new answer. So that's always a fun game too. Looking back at Ruby's history, is there a language feature that you or the core team is especially proud of? Something that you look back and go, oh, that really stood the test of time. Conversely, has there been anything in the Ruby community that's impressed you for like a library or a product or something like that? So,
as a language, the invention of the block Ruby is kind of remarkable for me.
Yep.
And it is very small change, but it is quite readable and writable and pretty expressive. And for the libraries, so the invention of the Ruby gem is very impressive. Actually, the very first version of Ruby gem is written in the very first version of this conference.
Yeah, yep, by David and Chad and Rich, or I can't remember exactly who was in that room at that time. Yeah, like my follow-up there was, we have two syntaxes for the block. Was there, like, which one came first? Did the do end come first, or the braces come first?
The brace comes first.
Okay. All right. And then you were like, oh, I need another way of doing this. So like maybe might be interesting.
Actually, before the first release of version 0.595, I released in my close friends, and then the Ruby's godfather Keiju Ishizuka claimed me that the mixing of the end and the brace is kind of confusing, so that I enhanced the syntax to the do end.
That's interesting. So it was like, oh well, it would be nice to match them up too. So that's cool. As we're looking at Ruby 3.0 and thinking about Ruby 3.0, there's a couple of questions about sort of like things that you might remove, and part of I guess the other sort of half of that question is, do you, I know that you have talked about sort of the way that major version upgrades have gone in other languages, and so are you thinking of the 2 to 3 transition as it being a big transition for people, like taking away a lot of things that they have to figure out how to replace, or maybe talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Between the Ruby version 1.8 and 1.9, we had some kind of the huge jump for the compatibility, and I think it was necessary, but it requires the community to migrate to the newer version 1.9 for, I don't know, 5-7 years.
It was a while.
Yeah, it is a lot of time. The half of the community stays in the 1.8 for a long time, and the core team made a lot of effort to improve the 1.9, so that the half of the Ruby community was left behind. So that I don't like that kind of tragedy, and as we see the similar tragedy in the Python community, so I feel even more stronger.
So is there anything that but it is on the flip side, it is opportunity to take things away. So are there things that you're thinking that you want to take away in Ruby 3?
we are going to remove the several features, several very trivial features like the dollar safe variable,
Yes.
or maybe the dollar semicolon. Power inherited the variable. Some of the power inherited weird variables, but they are very trivial. So and we took several years to remove that. So now, once you'll be warned to use that feature, then you got error for using that feature. Then we totally remove the feature in the future or something like that.
I don't recall if you talked about this on day one. It's been a couple of days now, but so we're looking at Ruby 2.7 for this coming up this year, and how many are we going to have? Ruby 2.8? Are we going to have Ruby 2.9? Do you have any thoughts there?
Will
we get to Ruby 2.10?
No.
Okay.
As I mentioned,
you got at least 3 minor versions left then.
Actually, as I mentioned in the keynote, so that there's no 1 to 8 to 9.
Okay.
So that we are going to plan to release 3.0 in next year.
Okay. Great.
Whatever happens. Unless very extremely bad things happen.
Okay. All right. Good. Let's see. So let's see here. What else? I don't know who this might have been because they didn't attach names on purpose, but someone wanted to know if you've changed your mind about macros in Ruby 3.0. I wonder who might have asked that.
No. That is a very long, familiar question, but I basically no. But in 2.6, we exposed the AST, so that we can build the AST from the Ruby program, and then you can tweak the AST, then you can generate the bytecode from that, so that you can create some kind of the intermediate processing of the program, so that means that you can implement some kind of macro using that kind of tool.
So you're saying there's a chance?
Yeah, there's a chance, but not officially in the language.
Maybe pre-processing hooks before you parse, and then
that kind of things. And then also some people mentioned about the transpiler of the Ruby, so Ruby to Ruby compiler, so the tweaking those kind of the transpiler, so that you can have the another chance to have something similar to macro. Maybe you can experiment new language features using that kind of the transpiler.
Yeah. Let's see. Don't forget, if you have questions, please, the mics are here. This is not just my time, it's your time. So if you have questions, please come up to these mics and I will call on you.
Aaron.
Let's see if anyone's at the mics. Oh! I've already covered macros.
Yeah, I know. I'm not going to ask. I'm not going to ask about macros. Is the pipeline operator going to come back?
I don't say there's zero chance.
The pipeline operator might be, just if we could talk about it for a second, because it might be an interesting view into how Ruby core decides on what experiments to take and how you evaluate the experiment and whether or not to go forward with it. So could you maybe talk about like who presented it, how you all did the evaluation and came up with the decision to pull it out?
Okay, I was the one who introduced the idea of the pipeline operator into Ruby at the Ruby Kaigi this year in Fukuoka. And then we discussed a little bit, and then we experimentally implement it in the trunk. And then we had several controversy. and then we found out that people expect pipeline operator to behave like an Elixir pipeline operator. It's kind of surprising for me. So after considering a little while, then it's not worth persuading the whole community. Yeah. So that and I just retract the
okay.
idea. Maybe sort of after the idea, we come up with the consensus of the behavior of the pipeline operator. We reconsider it.
Okay. I guess that's a good question that that someone had submitted, which is sort of around functional programming. Obviously, the pipeline operator is sort of a form of that. Are there any other things like you maybe talk about like what was the thing that drove you to say, oh, maybe we should have a pipeline operator? Was it looking at Elixir? Was it looking at other functional languages that you said, oh, okay, well maybe we should have the pipeline operator? Are there other things out there that you think of like, oh, maybe we could have something that does like this, or some other features out there that you've considered?
We considered pattern matching from the functional programming language, and then we merged it, we take it. And then what else? So we have very teeny idea like the immutable struct or something like that, but it's not a big deal. So maybe we add them in the next release or something, but not for Ruby 2.7.
Okay. So maybe expanding frozen, or is it?
Yeah,
okay.
Maybe we might add some kind of the syntax to create a JSON-like tree using the immutable hash and arrays or something. But we are not having any good idea or good expression to create that kind of a tree.
Okay. Well, if anyone out there, whoever submitted this question, if you
have
thoughts
we are welcome of any proposals.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, is there a good way of, if someone has a proposal that they want to submit to Ruby core, is it the best way to write it up, or is it to submit a patch first, or what do you think the best way to submit a proposal like that?
Submit to our issue tracker Redmine and at the bugs to the rubylang.org.
Okay.
And because we might change the proposed syntax or features after the discussion, so that having a pull request is good things because we can tell the exact behavior the original proposers intended, but we might not take the exact pull request.
Sure.
So if you can describe the basic ideas, so that feel free to submit in English or Japanese.
Okay. This gentleman.
Actually, the English is preferable because of the very fraction of the community can understand Japanese.
Okay.
Hello, Matz. I first thank you for implementing or for bringing pattern matching into Ruby. That's really exciting. And I'm wondering if there might be plans for the future to add pattern matching like Elixir at the function level. So right now you can do case in. In an Elixir, you can define multiple versions of a function with different parameters or conditionals. Is that something, well, right now, if you define a method in Ruby, again, it overwrites the first one. So there would need to be some changes. But is that something that you see valuable or possible in the future?
Yeah, in Elixir, we have the multiple version of the function, and you can dispatch it according to the patterns. But we have already had optional arguments or something like that, so that it is quite difficult to have the overloading methods in Ruby. So that I don't say it's impossible, but it's quite difficult to add the overloading methods in Ruby. So that it might take time, even if it's possible.
Thank you.
Aaron?
Sorry.
Oh, you.
Sorry. So I noticed that in Perl 6 now, Raku, they use emojis for some operators like atomic plus. Would you consider adding emoji operators in Ruby?
Or can I expand it to just be Unicode operators?
Well, yes. You can.
Actually, we Japanese suffers for long for these so many characters, and why you guys want to be suffered?
Because they look cool.
Yeah. And you have to pay the price. I know that. And yeah,
Maybe
not soon.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe I'll ask another interesting question, which is not necessarily all the way to Unicode operators, but one thing that's interesting about Ruby is that the set of operators is fixed. Whereas you have a lot of languages where you can sort of have this arbitrary operator out there. Did you ever consider having arbitrary operators rather than just the fixed set that we have of greater than, less than, spaceship, all that kind of stuff?
In some languages, you can add the arbitrary combination of the characters as the operators, like a Haskell, like Scala, ML language. But in some languages, the new operator needs to be followed in some particular format, like R requires the operators to be surrounded by the percent or something like that. And the former ones is, I think the former makes your program very, very cryptic. But, it's kind of like a macro. So that for the same reason, I don't want to add that kind of things into the language. And the latter ones, in the adding new arbitrary operator within a certain format is possible, but we are lacking the characters. I don't know how we describe the new operator, but I think the latter has slightly more chance.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like trying to figure out like how do you express precedence rules and all that kind of stuff is also hard for them.
Yeah, in some language like Eiffel or some other language has the same precedence for the newly added operator.
Oh, that makes sense. Oh, yeah.
So, especially because so many people here are new to programming or relatively new to programming, what advice would you give to people who are interested in making their own programming language, or would you encourage others to play with making their own programming languages like you did with Ruby?
So there are several books on creating programming languages, and some of them are very good books. But unfortunately, those books focus on implementation of the language. So there are very few books, or probably no books for focusing on the design of the programming language. Actually, a few years ago, I wrote a book about designing programming language, but it's in Japanese and translated it into Korean and then Chinese, so that you do speak those languages. That's okay, buy my book.
Well, maybe we need to get that book translated. Maybe we should get it translated into English then.
Yeah, probably.
Okay. Makes note.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm live tweeting random things. So, the ... operator. I dearly missed it, and I'd like it back if at all possible, but I think that's kind of... The ... which was shorthand for method. So a lot of us who tend to have a little bit more of a functional bent were really, really fond of that operator, and we're kind of sad to see it go. Though with as many admittedly evil things as we did to the operator, we kind of understand why.
Yeah,
maybe explain what it did.
Okay,
also.
operator is the operator to retrieve the method object from the object. So the object.column_foo takes a foo object from foo method object from the object. Currently, we have to do that object.method with the symbol foo or something like that. So that it's kind of indirect. So that by using dot colon operator, so that you have to retrieve the method object directly from the object. The one things. And then, okay, there are the terms named the Lisp 1 and Lisp 2. So the Lisp 1 is a language like a Scheme and Scala or Python. So that the dot object dot name notation retrieves the corresponding function or method object. And then the other language, like object.foo, calls the method of the method foo, like Ruby or some other many programming language, is called Lisp 2. And the Ruby is the Lisp 2 camp. Because so that by using that kind of notation, we don't have to add a parenthesis every time, so that you can emulate the attribute access through the method. It's better for the object-oriented programming. But for functional programming, so that it is sometimes better to retrieve the function object or method object. Then, to emulate the functional programming in Ruby, so that it is much easier to retrieve the method object without those kind of the method indirection. So that's the reason we once introduced the dot colon operator. But we retract the idea for two reasons. The first one is three reasons actually. The one reason is dot colon operator retrieve the method object from the object, but to retrieve the method object from the classes, modules, we still have to call the instance method or the instance method. Instance method. Yeah. So it's not kind of the inconsistency and imperfection. So this is one reason. The second reason is we added some features inspired by the functional programming, but this addition is kind of ad hoc. So we believe that we have to take time to consider about the ground design of the functional programming in Ruby. So that's the second and the biggest reason to retract the dot colon operator. The third reason is the dot colon does not really looks like the method retrieval rather than the Braille. So I don't like that operator appearance. So for those reasons, we retracted the dot colon operator. So that means we reject the idea of the method reference operator altogether. So that maybe we are going to have time to consider about the functional programming in Ruby. So that as a result, we might reintroduce the new operator, and that might happen to be dot colon.
Okay.
But after the discussion we are going to have.
Are we
of course, we invite you to join the discussion.
Yeah. We kind of shortcutted your question. Did we get to your question?
Yeah, I would say that's perfectly fair. I mean, yes, we did very bad things with it, and yes, you want to be careful introducing those things because then we horribly abuse them, write blog posts, and probably give conference talks about them, which we're sorry about. Anyways. Joking aside, I appreciate that you're spending a lot of time thinking about this and being very considerate of introducing new operators because once they're in there, they're very hard to not have in there. So I'll very much be contributing to this discussion. And anyone else who is interested in that, I know Zavarok and some others were, I'd like to have them participate in some of these discussions as well, and I believe they will be. So thank you for taking the time and being considerate about those.
Yeah, thank you.
Over here.
Hello. Dear Matz, over here on your right, on this other mic, Matz.
Oh, here. Yeah.
Oh,
the
here
lights
you
in
are.
our eyes. Yeah.
So in some far-off, distant, but inevitable future where you're no longer able or no longer interested in being the sort of driving designer of Ruby, have you thought about what, how the language design will move forward after you? In this future, there's still lots of people using Ruby, of course.
Yeah.
Not to be morbid, maybe. Have you thought about retirement?
Yeah,
What
that
might
one.
happen?
Actually, the great one lost some Python creator.
I was gonna ask
Retired.
you about
Yeah,
this.
he retired
Not in
last
front of
year.
everybody, but here we are.
Yeah, then that made me thought about my retirement plan in the future. But he's 9 years older than me, so that we are happy. We can stand for next 9 years or something.
Yeah.
And then the Python community formed the board of design or something with the 5 members or something by the voting. And yeah, but I'm not a true believer of the democracy in open source software.
Well, I mean, you don't necessarily want 4 people painting a picture.
Yeah.
Right? You kind of want, sometimes you want 1 person. But
Yeah.
I think that maybe to his question, you know, like, have you thought about what it would look like? I know that you have a lot of people who already do lots of things.
Yeah, and okay,
We're not trying to put you on the spot either, so.
Okay, year 2025, the 6 years later.
Adds to calendar.
Yeah, 6 years after, I will turn 60.
Okay.
But probably I'm having some kind of a year off.
Yeah.
So that community can stay. So that probably I will name some kind of the successor or replacer at least for a year.
Okay.
And after the Ruby 3, we have some kind of designing practice things for my successor candidate. And then after that, I might name one of them to be my successor.
Okay. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's.
But it's the big plan. We have the years ahead. So
yeah. I mean.
So that future is still like there's a single like auteur of the language, like a single sort of designer.
You still want to have one person at that time. Yeah.
Because of the some kind of the community things or the things this design decision could be irresponsible. Okay, I don't care about this feature, so okay, I will follow the other ones or something like that. So that makes language less consistent or something like that. So I still believe the language should be designed by the very one particular person to make a decision and to take responsibility.
Sure.
Yet.
Yep, over here.
Yeah, so about 8 years ago, you filed an issue on the Ruby tracker about autoload and possibly wanting to remove it, and it got closed earlier this year. But I was wondering what went through your mind over the past, so many 8 years behind your opinion of autoloading and its use, and should we use it as much as we do, and just generally your opinion of it.
I still don't like the autoloads, and I want to remove that from the language if possible. But the impact of the removing was far bigger than I expected. So I don't want to punish the community because of my preference. So that's the biggest reason I changed the mind.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Here.
Mr. Matsumoto, how do you see the relationship between the automated tests and the typing in programming languages? Do you think having one reduce the need for the other, or do you think they can work together?
No. by using static typings, we find more errors at the compile time so that we don't have to code a very silly type test, like assert kind of sometimes things in a test, so that we can reduce the assertion from the tests. But in ratio of the these kind of the type assertion silly tests are relatively smaller in the test, so that we have to pay more attention to the logic in the test. So that, but these silly things can be very omitted in the development state. So that having static testing, static type checking, increase the quality of your software, I believe.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So during the keynote, you mentioned how I/O concurrency, how you regret adding threads, and you were interested in using fibers as a solution, and you mentioned the async gem as well. And I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on what you think the future of concurrency in Ruby is.
Thread is difficult because of we share states and we have nothing to guide the concurrency structure, architecture. But by using the guilds or isolates or the fibers, so that we can reduce the burden of the concurrency, for one thing. Then, as I explained in the keynote, the isolates can be considered as the web workers in JavaScript. So you can offload the time, long-running tasks into the separated the native threads, and then it is independent namespace, so that you don't have to worry about the shared state or something like that. You can communicate via channels. And then for I/O multiplexity, and this is very much important. For example, the Node.js is single-threaded, but it's still fast because of these kind of the quick I/O multiplexing. And we want to provide that kind of feature so that we reduce the cost of the context switching of the fibers using sometimes assembler or something like that. And then the cost of the context switching is reduced dramatically into 6 to 7. Yeah. Then we are going to introduce the core of the async gem into the very core. It actually the core part of the async gem into the core, the Ruby core. Mm-hmm. It's kind of confusing. And then the other part is still defined in the async gem, so that we can use the I/O multiplexity without marking with the async await things.
So, yeah. So would that mean like there would be async versions of the HTTP, the existing core library?
Yeah, we are going to have the async version of the database access and the socket access and the file access or something like that.
Cool. Thank you.
My follow-up question there is, having a lot of async stuff makes it harder for people who write C extensions, because you have a C extension that kind of expected to live and to do its thing, and it can't be like, I don't recall, can you save a fiber through a C extension frame right now?
Yes, on some major platforms we use the stack switching, so that you can keep the C extension stack frame, even though that we can't switch context.
Okay. Yeah.
What is an upcoming change or addition to Ruby that you are personally most excited about?
The most excited one is the pattern matching, so that it will open up the whole new world in the Ruby program. It's still experimental and it's still slow, but its expressiveness is very dramatic.
Yeah, you talked a lot about things that are coming in Ruby 2.7 and Ruby 3. Have you thought about any features or modules that you could remove in Ruby 3 or Ruby 4 without having a lot of issues with backwards compatibility?
Well, so we still have the very old modules, like the singleton module or something.
Abbrev.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe, or English,
English,
something like
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, those kind of things can be more, they're removed in the future. And actually, we made them made them the bundle gems, so that we can remove them gradually.
All right, I think I'll ask you a couple quick questions here at the end, non-programming ones. One person said, like, you work on this every day, and do you get tired of it? Do you feel like you get burned out? And do you do anything? How do you cope with that? Do you just take time away from it? Do you have something that you do, or anyway?
Actually, I have no obligation. I'm hired by Heroku, and then thanks to the Heroku and Salesforce.com. But still, I have no obligation. I have no assigned job. So that I can do whatever I want in the Ruby. And I spend some of my time as a language designer, so to make decision of the language change, language future. The other part as a programmer, so that I implement the mRuby, the alternative version of Ruby. So when I get tired of the designing language, I go to as a programmer. Then I implement some new features of the mRuby. Then I got tired of the C programming. I go back to the designing the language. And if I tired both of them, so that I go out and read the book.
So you kind of switch back and forth to kind of keep yourself fresh. I will ask one bonus question. We're just at time because I had forgot to get to this. Someone asked if there's a future where MRI and mRuby kind of merge together, or are they always going to be separate?
I think they will always be separated because of the first priority is a little bit different. CRuby is the priority of CRuby is the canonical implementation. So every new feature is implemented in CRuby first. Then the other implementation like JRuby, Truffle Ruby, mRuby, and in addition, so the CRuby are focusing on the performance of the in the server side, especially, and it also usable as a scripting language. But JRuby is focused on the big, long-running server process, and it is for that case, JRuby is unbeatable. And mRuby is focused on the smaller devices and the reducing the memory consumption or something like that. For that purpose, mRuby is the winner. And for that reason, so that every different implementation has every different domain to live, but we are not going to merge them in one.
Okay. One last bonus question. Someone wanted to know how your dog is doing.
Yeah, thank you. Two months ago, my dog lost. Yeah, it's gone. And but don't worry. 48 hours later, we found them. Found him. Yeah, and actually, I don't know, but he just disappeared.
Okay.
From my backyard, and no one the fence was shut, so that I don't know, there's no reason to escape, but he disappeared. But 2 days later, some police called me, and my neighbor, 200 years away, who found the dog, and they called the police. We found him.
Well, great. All right, well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Matz, for your time.
Yeah, thank you.